tell people if you'd like access to these office hours, here's how you do it. You apply for Startup of the Year, and then we'll kick it off and we'll talk about. I had some similar conversations. Welcome to Recapped with Established. I'm Rich Maloy, VP of Engagement here at Established, and each week we hold office hours for startups in the Startup of the Year network. Office hours are private, so the founders are comfortable sharing what's top of the mind for them, but we get together at the end with the mentors and talk about what was on founders' minds, and then share the advice that we offer to them with you, the viewer. And if you're a startup and you'd like access to these office hours, please apply to Startup of the Year by going to startupofyear.com and clicking on the link to apply. We'd love to have you there. We'd love to meet you and invite you into our community and give you access to these resources like Johnny Good Times Guidos. John, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Rich. I'm pumped up here on a Friday afternoon, trying to bring the energy level up. But I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Yeah, man. Absolutely. No, you always bring the energy level, John, so it's good.
I try.
Yeah. Today is also Juneteenth, so happy Juneteenth. For Established and for Startup of the Year, we have a platform and a global network, and we take our responsibility in the startup community very seriously. We're doubling down on our commitment to recruiting Black-led startups and other underestimated founders, and making our place where Black and Latin and underestimated founders have a place to build their high potential startups. There's a long history of this for Startup of the Year, and I think with geographic diversity comes other diversity as well. And so it's not just your typical startup profile, if you will. I read a great post that was shared in the Established Slack channel from, I think it was Black and Brown Founders on Medium, and I'll find that link and share it in the chat here as well. But great quote from that, which was, the antidote to inequality is economic mobility. And I love that. That's one of my personal mission is to transform the world through innovation and entrepreneurship. And I believe that technology gives all people the opportunity to grow, learn, and earn. And that's what we're here to do, right? For Startup of the Year is to give those opportunities to the founders in our community. Wouldn't you say so, John?
Yeah, that's one of our, one of our missions here at Establish is to celebrate all sorts of diversities and backgrounds and help and promote those for the better good. Yeah. So definitely, I second those sentiments fully, Rich.
Yeah, awesome. Always great to have you here, Johnny. So, and you were a Startup of the Year contender once upon a time when you were running your startup. Would love for you to give a little bit of background and intro about yourself.
Right. So I come from a legal background, went to law school, and then I practiced law 10 plus years in Chicago, trial attorney, right? And then had the opportunity to work with some colleagues in startup entrepreneurial space, earlier stage company. Started a company called Turbo Appeal back in 2015. It was a property tax software as a service platform, right? And the idea was to bring big data and machine learning and put it in the hands of consumers and homeowners to help them appeal their property taxes. But basically, I mean, it was a real estate evaluation, property value tool. We monetized off of the property tax world or space, right?
Yep. Which
is usually a newsworthy topic. Dependent. It's going to be very newsworthy here in the near future, given the real estate property values are going to be all over the place. But
interesting.
Anyways, So yeah, you're right. So in 2015, we started in 2015. We participated in Startup of the Year. The summit that year was in back when the company was Tech.co. We participated in the Las Vegas event. We were runners up, so it was amazing, and it was a really great opportunity. It was it got a lot of larger conversations going. I think we were able to obtain and facilitate and start a number of different conversations with some VCs and some investors that came on board with our company. Yeah. We had an exit in 2017. Awesome. During which all of that, right? It's your business MBA 101. you learn trial and error while you're running a company, and it was a really great experience. We raised a pretty significant Series A during that time, which exposed me to raising capital and investing and that sort of thing. So after all that was done, had a few other projects. Now I'm here at Established, happy to be here. And one of the things I'm excited about, and I know you are as well, Rich, is our investing arm, Established Ventures, which helps to provide resources for some of those those startups that stand out within the Established and Startup of the Year ecosystem. And so, yeah, we have a lot of good stuff going on. But I appreciate you again having me. As you had mentioned, I participated in the office hours this week, first time doing it, and I'm not just saying this, I'm not blowing smoke. Was genuinely impressed with the founders I talked with, and I know we'll get into that, but it really blew me away. Their products, services were amazing.
That's awesome. I love it. And I love this is like the startup circle of life, right? Where you were part of the program and then you're giving back to the program because you do have so much insight and so much value to add. So it's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm a case study, and now I'm somewhat biased because I'm a part of the team, but I have nothing but good things to say about the experience, and I look at it as a success story, right? Yeah. I mean, we had a very nice exit for our investors, in a 2.5 year turnaround time. So, and Startup of the Year played a part in that. So
that's fantastic. I love it. Yeah, it's awesome. And I was a judge. It was my first Startup of the Year event, and I was one of not the finals judges, but I was one of the floor judges that was running around
nice.
During that event. So we probably met then, but it was a busy time.
I would imagine so through Frank, definitely. Mm-hmm. I know that you have a relationship with him stretching back, and myself as well. So I would imagine that we probably did run into each other at that time, and hopefully you voted for us.
I'm sure I did.
Yeah. Good.
I love unsexy industries, so it's great.
I do too.
Yeah.
I actually, some people come in and they have fireworks and buzz, and you see them trickle out on occasion here and there. But then, I mean, part of what I wanted to get into during this recap is,
Do it.
there are those industries that are, look, they're not sexy. They're boring. They're automating and they're disrupting monotonous paper-driven industries. But look, there's a heck of a lot of value there. I mean, I can tell you firsthand with my legal background in the legal tech space, right? Nobody, the idea of sitting around and reviewing legal documents for 12 hours a day, I don't know, to me, there's nothing less sexy, right? But, there's those companies that came into that space with OCR and other technologies that, again, probably may not be exciting to people, but I mean, they really disrupted that industry, and they were some pretty heavy hitters, and their enterprise value is through the roof. So, yeah, I'm the same as you.
Yeah, awesome. Well, let's dive in. I mean, we don't, as you watch these, that we don't. For those of you that are watching, we don't talk about the companies specifically, but we do talk about the advice that we offered them, and what was top of mind for founders. And I think we've both got similar themes this week, which are around customer acquisition, even customer discovery, which comes before the customer acquisition. So tell me about some of the stuff that's on founders' minds this week for you, and some of the advice you were able to offer.
Sure. A recurring theme on my calls was, and some of this is my first time doing this, right? And so I came in with some preconceived notions of what these calls were going to look like, because I've been there.
Yeah.
And so I was anticipating, one of the things I like to do when I talk to people is, what is the purpose of this call? Are there any asks? Are there any follow-up action items? And I was anticipating, because I've been there, I'm now a seed investor myself and a part of some funds, right, is that they were going to ask for some introductions to some VC groups, or they're raising a round of capital. You know how it goes, right? So,
Yep.
And I was surprised that, in a good way, that wasn't necessarily the intent of the calls. It was more of facilitating introductions, right? Which I like a lot, because you see a lot of in the news is this group raised X amount of capital to grow their product, and it's huge news, as it should be, right? We want to celebrate those wins. So I understand that, but that's just the starting point, right?
Yeah.
You raise this capital. It's not time to go on vacation and celebrate with champagne. It's like, okay, now you have a fiduciary duty to your investors, number one.
Yeah.
And two is you just got to build and scale this thing so that they can add value to everyone, to the consumer, to the end user, et cetera. So what I liked about these calls was, it was like, okay, you know what? We have some market validation, product validation. We're going to market, they're already in market. They have the resources established for a 12, 14-month runway, as most earlier stage companies do. And they were looking for introductions to people in those channels that they're, those markets that they're trying to disrupt and grow into, and influencers that can maybe test out their product, and you give them some kind words, those sorts of things. So, and which I'm digging through my network right now, thinking of people that I can make those introductions to, because, as you know, part of this is we want to help those startups in our ecosystem grow. So I was pleasantly surprised by all of that, and was curious as to your experience with the companies you were working with this week as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like they went in order. The first one was, we were talking about customer discovery and running your own accelerator, if you will, and applying to accelerators as well. But they're very early on in product development, very technical business, and they have very few large customers to go after. And making inroads into that industry is not my industry. And so the best thing that I could offer was dig into things like the lean canvas, right, which is Ash Maria's take on the business model canvas, but it's one of my favorites for very early stage companies. And the website is leanstack.com. And you go there and you can create business model canvases, or lean canvases is it's his take on it, for whatever, for products, for businesses, for whatever it is that you're working on. But it helps you think through those things of getting out of being so solution oriented and being more problem oriented, and solving the problem instead of just talking about your solution. So it kind of started there and talking about that customer discovery, because before you can go out and acquire those customers, you have to make sure you understand what their problem is, and then be able to address the problem.
Very interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Did you get into any conversations about how COVID has affected their business models or disrupted their normal way of business at all?
Yeah, I mean, it is few and far between the businesses that are not being impacted by COVID. Even if it's just like, oh, I couldn't go to the big annual convention for my industry to meet the people that I need to meet to get the distribution deals that I need because it didn't
Right.
happen.
Right.
And so everybody is getting hit by it. One of them in a positive way where their potential customers are sitting at home scrolling, right? And because their businesses and the world that they live in is on pause. And so they're able to actually acquire customers easier because they have more, their customers have a little bit more time on their hands, if you will.
Very, very interesting. Yeah, it's funny. I'm just thinking, personally, the conversations how at the end of Q1, everyone was talking about COVID and how it's affected business and their plans for the future given the new landscape. And now, to me, and again, I may be just on an island here, but it's more of, okay, that happened. The whole world got shook up, and now we're kind of anticipating going back to business as usual. So I
Wow.
don't know. It's interesting how just over the course of a few months, I've never been a part of this in my lifetime, right? Of
Nobody has.
how quickly and nimble the companies have been able to pivot because of being nimble, right? So,
Right, right.
and now it seems to be people are anticipating, okay, well, now we're shifting gears back into the way things, whatever the new normal is, right? But how things were, they had anticipated prior to the whole pandemic.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like even the big businesses were able to be more nimble, and they're learning as though all of this talk about corporate innovation has maybe started to take root and had an effect.
Well, it's a good point, and it's affected our business as well because, as you know, we've been working with a number of different clients. In fact, I'm going to be working all night here because a lot of bigger companies, as you mentioned, that have historically had a I don't know, historical big business type of atmosphere are now doing workshops and certain things within their own companies to um, help with that innovation, right? To give tools to their teams and their employees so that they can innovate and roll out new products quicker and more efficiently. And so, no,
Yeah.
it's all very interesting, and it's a good point.
Yeah, yeah. And you think about, yeah, I mean, not to make this, a macro discussion, but it is something that is absolutely fascinating, right? And you think about what, what would have happened if this had happened 10 years ago and there wasn't Zoom, there wasn't Slack, there were video conferencing options. I mean, Skype has been around for decades, right? For 2 decades or so. So Skype has been around. Maybe that would have been Skype's big moment instead of Zoom's. I don't know, but the way that we work now is just so remote enabled, and it makes it so possible. I mean, we're a fully remote team, so for us, I tell people all the time. Tell people all the time there was no change for us, right?
Right.
My kids are right outside the door here, every day, so that doesn't change for me. But it
No.
is it is interesting to bring it, I guess, to this back to the startups, right? Is it on the positive side, the startups that are able to capitalize on this and seize the opportunity to get the most positive benefit out of it from their side. And I have seen, unfortunately, I've seen cases of businesses that even during these office hours that were negatively impacted, right? So focused not in the travel industry, but on a product that you would take with you when you're traveling. And there's
Sure.
just there's just no market for that, right? So how do you go about finding new customers and new uses for your product and forcing that nimbleness on you?
Right. Yeah, to that point as well, there's let's say various different industries that are involved, like you said, about moving or, well, let me, I'm trying to be sensitive here because I don't want to talk about anybody specifically, but there are certain industries and companies, right, that it's their business model to create efficiencies of moving around the world a little bit easier. And so, to your point, that it seems like that could be good for others, and then a little bit. Some companies needed to go down to maybe a skeleton crew to get through some slow times, and then help hopefully flourish post pandemic. Let's
Yeah.
say so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. But the connections piece, so coming back to some of the advice you're offering, right, is that the connections piece is super important. Like, yeah, you have to ask, who do you know, right? Here's what I'm looking for, and the best thing that a founder can do is have a quick intro email and a one pager or a deck that explains what their business is, and you've got your customer deck, you've got your investor deck, and you say, if I send the best thing you could do is to make it easy for somebody else to make an introduction for you. An intro paragraph, here's what I'm looking for. It'd be great if you could send this along, right? And then that takes the work for you or I, takes the work off of us. I don't have to think about what does this company do and what's their ask, is I can make that work on that double opt-in intro just by having that stuff and strike while the iron is hot. If you have that in your back pocket, you just type that up and send it out. Now you've got intros that you can pass along. I'm going to do the same thing. I've got a couple companies that are going to send me things and I will pass those along as well. Ask for that connection.
Definitely. Maybe even just a few bullet points that'll make be easy for a person making the introduction to copy and paste, right? So that's what I've been receiving as well. So another thing I wanted to bring up with you, and I was scratching my head because I've been there before running a startup, is the ability. Startups oftentimes, or earlier stage companies, don't have the luxury of A/B testing or beta testing. Or you have to make a decision to the best of your ability, and then you have to execute and run, but mitigating risk as well when doing so, because you don't want to leverage the entire company to follow a product or an idea that you think will work. But
absolutely,
another recurring theme that I had, and I went through it personally, was companies go to market with a B2C plan, sales strategy, right? And then they oftentimes realize that the customer acquisition cost really prohibits what they're trying to do.
Yep.
And then they realize that the bigger conversation, or the more, let's say, valuable conversations from a margin standpoint or from a revenue standpoint, is those B2B2C conversations, right? They can find the partners that already have exposure to whatever you want to call it, thousands of consumers, right? So I will say that another theme that I was talking through with the companies that I spoke with was that B2C model, B2B2C model, right? And navigating those paths, and having the ability to do so quickly and pivot, maybe not a full pivot necessarily, but just your target market and target audience with your product. So any thoughts on that topic?
That is a great point. I hadn't piece that together, but I have multiple data points of the same thing happening, B2C turning into a B2B2C. And that is so common. Now that I think about it, I could think of 3 or 4 companies just off the top of my head. I'm sure there's plenty more. So maybe the thing is that if you're a B2C business, especially a B2C SaaS business, right? You are inherently, you have a B2B2C model. You just need to discover it.
That's right. And to that point, I didn't mean to cut you off, but oftentimes that comes up. I can tell you personally as well, is when you're being introduced to investors and strategic investors, right? Because when you bring on strategic investors, you're hoping that they can potentially make some introductions for you. And in doing so, when you're raising that capital, whether it be a seed round, a Series A, whatever the case may be, you're oftentimes dealing with heavy hitters, people that are a little bit more higher net worth, people that can introduce you to maybe not just their neighbor necessarily, but I can put you in touch with another one of my portfolio companies that has access to hundreds of thousands of potential customers or users of your product. It's something I've been giving a lot of thought to recently, and it's a pretty good topic to maybe speak about at some point.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. In fact, I think I'm going to follow up with one of these companies. I was going in that direction of like, here's some places where you can meet those sorts of influencers that you're looking for, which is essentially a B2B2C model for that company. But the other one, we didn't talk about this, but I think that is something that I'm going to bring up. That's a great point. I love that. I'm going to use that in the future, as I've seen that over and over again.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. That was a recurring theme as well, because I mean, look, who wouldn't want, instead of having to grind for every mom and pop that's out there, you could have access to an exposure to a significant amount of users at some point. And additionally, a lot of those oftentimes prompt the rev share models.
Yeah.
Right. Because you want it to be a win-win for everybody. And,
Yep.
Oftentimes too, and I had to caution somebody about this on one of my calls as well, is look, it's easy to fall down the rabbit hole or get sidetracked into when you're trying to sell, specifically when you're newer and trying to go after a saturated market, of like a freemium model, right? Or giving away your product, or just making it hard for customers to say no.
Mm-hmm.
And I've dealt with this a number of times personally too, is at some point when you bring on marketing team or sales people, is you have to let them do their job.
Yeah.
Right. And, it's like, okay, if it sold itself, we wouldn't need you. Right. So, part of this is, you got to sell the product and add value to the company there. And like, there's some give and take between the product team oftentimes and sales, as you well know, right. Is that you have to also make sure that you're providing value and giving the sales team something to sell. But,
and likewise, the sales team needs to come back to the product team and say, I've heard this, being asked for multiple times, and it's never a panacea, right? There's always the next feature and the next feature and the next feature. But if you know that, feature A has been, or feature G, in your list has been asked for by every single person you talk to, okay, well, maybe that should be feature A that you go out next.
And that's why, there's so critical to finding the right product team, product manager, let's call it, right? Because those people, when they can communicate the needs of the customer and the sales team back to the dev team, and there's oftentimes a little communication hiccup there, but those people that can do so without upsetting everybody in the entire company, I mean, those are, in my experience, pivotal to creating, a great company.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Wow.
Well, good. Anything else come up from your conversation?
The one thing that I've on the B2C side that I've found sharing with startups, this is partially a shameless plug, right? Because is a company called Brandzuka, because I'm an investor through Springtime. I'm an investor in Brandzuka, but I'm an investor because I believe in it. But what it allows startups to do is to do highly targeted video advertising, and so you can get AAA video ad space. But you can do it without having to go spend $100,000 on an agency, right? And so, so it gives you that sort of like really niche targeting that you would be able to get from Facebook ads, but to be able to do it through video, and not just on Facebook. So that's something that for those companies that do have the B2C model, that is a way to get videos. And I see the ads and they come through sometimes, for myself. And sometimes it's just, somebody that's talking into their phone and that's the whole ad and I'm like, this is a terrible ad, but hey, you know what? That is so prevalent right now. You don't have to spend, $10,000 to produce some ad or something like that. I mean, that would be dirt cheap even, but you could just do a simple ad and do a little bit of recording and get somebody to do a quick edit for you and go to Brandzuka and pop it up there. So it's a good way to do that, highly targeted when you have really niche customer segment that you're attacking.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Good, so man. Do they actually do the product placement or the ad placement for you, or is it just the software for the video? No, they do the ad placement for you. So you have to bring your own. So you shoot your video and take care of all that, and then you say, good. Oh well, I'm. This is Rich's wedding dress shop in Denver, Colorado, right? And so I'm targeting, women that are in their 20s to 40s that have been searching for wedding dresses and that are in this, X mile radius, and then advertise my side hustle is a wedding dress shop. I'm fresh in the market for once.
Oh, well, if you're in the Denver area, you should see my ads on Brandzuka.
Very nice.
Yeah. No, it's good. No, but yeah, it's just a kind of like an agency disintermediation platform. That's the key term there. Take a lot of steps out of the process, and there you go. So
got it.
Good stuff. All right. Well, Johnny, this is Johnny Good Times. Great having you on on Recapped here. Thank you always for sharing your time and your energy and your insights with the founders. I know you're part of the team. But it's great to be able to pull you in and have you here doing office hours.
It was my pleasure, and I said this on one of the calls the other day. Is that I came into it and I wanted to help help and add value. And I personally think that I took more from it than I probably gave. So, and those are the kind of projects I like to be a part of.
Yep, absolutely.
But with that, I hope I did provide a little bit of guidance as well.
I'm sure you did. Yeah. I'm sure you did. So thanks everybody for watching today. If you are a startup and you want access to great mentors like John Guidos, and our other members of our Startup of the Year network, then go to startupofyear.com and look for the application. Applications are open. Our summit is officially announced November 9th and 10th. It'll be a fully virtual summit. We will be doing curated one-on-one matchmaking sessions. And leading up to it, we are continuing to do these office hours and matchmaking sessions for the founders in our network. And so send great founders our way, and please do apply. We're looking forward to meeting you in the future. Thanks everybody, and have a great weekend.
Bye.